All right. Well, we are back here with our live studio audience. All right. That's totally not true. But Rolo is going to be here soon, shortly. He has stepped out for the moment on a walk.
Rolo's left the building.
Yeah, Rolo's left the building, but he will be back here representing the entire studio audience. Anyhow, I'm so glad you're back here with us today, listening into my conversation with my good friend, Becky Niemeyer. Becky's been walking us through her ordinary life as she's experienced the highs, lows, and everywhere in between. Welcome back. Hi, I'm Stacy Holmes, and this is Glordinary. A few moments where we celebrate God's glory and champion the ordinary. I'm glad you're here. All right, Beck, we were chatting about what you've labeled the extraordinary no in your life, and through that difficult infertility journey, and so many people can relate to that. And you talked about how you learned how to trust God in such a big way during that season, that God was always working, even and especially when you couldn't see it, right?
Yeah.
It cracks me up because we totally forgot to say in the extraordinary no that you did indeed get pregnant and you did indeed have Jenna.
I did.
I mean, obviously, we should have been able to put that together because we said that's how we met.
Right,
was
right,
because we had our kids. So we enjoyed lots of fun times those first 3 years of their lives. We did a lot of birthday parties together, lots of play dates. We did every Friday. It was a fun season.
It was.
It really was. And then things took a turn. Not for the bad, just in a way that you refer to as the extraordinary yes.
It was an extraordinary yes, absolutely. So we had been trying to get pregnant again, and we had been praying for another pregnancy. On the fence of, well, if we don't get pregnant, could we adopt? You and I kind of shared that too, because you were kind of
we were in the process of that.
So it was just a lot of unknowns.
Right.
And just praying and saying, okay, God, and having that. So I talked about before that supernatural trust and joy and peace and patience. And that really that stuck with me. And that Romans 15:13, that's why I just rattled it off, because it's just such a anchoring verse to me.
Right.
So not really sure, what God was doing. And then we got a yes, and we got a really big yes. And I remember telling you about this at the McDonald's.
Yes.
We were having I was having a Shamrock Shake.
Yeah, I can't do the dairy. So
Okay.
I was having a full sugar Coke at the time.
Okay, I was having enough Shamrock Shake for the two of us.
And I'm sure mine was like a jumbo size. So I'm just going to own it and say.
That's fine. That's fine. And the kids were playing in the McDonald's area.
Yes.
And
getting actively sick.
Yep. I remember telling you and our friend Willow, who was with us, that I was finally pregnant.
Yes.
But
yes, I think I can take it over from here.
Sure,
Yeah, you said, girls, I have some news, and I immediately blurted out, "Oh, you're pregnant!" And you said, "Yep," and you're like, "But there's more," and I was like, "Twins?" And you're like, "More," and you said, "There's 4. It's quadruplets." And I remember it was the very first time that my brain said, "Stacy, pick up your jaw, pick up your jaw." And I physically had to lift up my jaw because, it is not every day that you hear that one of your close friends is about to have quadruplets. In fact, that was the only day of my life that I have heard that.
And I don't think I'd ever even said the word quadruplets until that became our story. So yes, so we got pregnant not only with 1 or 2 or 3, but with 4 babies. And it was just such a bizarre way, because it wasn't on it was nothing that was expected. It wasn't something that we were going to have. And so it was a huge answer to a prayer. And I remember
very extraordinary. Yes.
Extraordinary. But I remember what you said to me too, is you looked me straight in the eye and you said, "Oh, you who are highly favored." And that was a nod to Luke 1:28, because the angel said that to Mary when she was pregnant with Jesus. And I felt just so guilted and just so not worthy when you said that to me, because truthfully, I was still shocked and I was so scared.
Yeah.
And I felt like, even though we had been praying for this, and this was something that Andy and I wanted so bad, not only did we get the yes, but we got this extraordinary yes.
Yeah.
It felt almost like, oh God, are you cursing us instead of blessing us? And
sure.
It was just this panicky, fearful, initially place of where we're at. So no, I did not feel highly favored. I didn't. I felt quite the opposite, which is embarrassing to admit, but also is true.
I
It's
think
where
it's
I was
real.
at.
Yeah. I think it's honest and it's raw.
Yeah.
And I think there's a beauty in that.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
and it makes sense because
Yeah.
at the time, Andy's a police officer. You're working in the public schools. So, I mean, you both have solid jobs, but I
Yeah.
mean, going from 1 to 5, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
And kids ain't free.
No.
So,
Nope, kids are not free. No, and it was just one of those things that as we went through the pregnancy and as we just kind of were like, all right, God, you gave these children to us.
Yeah.
Not only is this just a yes, this is just an explosive yes, but
that is
but
your extraordinary yes, girl.
But it was so cool too, just to see what God was able to do, because as it unfolded from the pregnancy to me having them, they were born obviously premature, to me walking with 4 babies and then 4 toddlers and for,
Ooh.
you know,
Just can we just
Just every
pause for a
step.
moment of prayer?
those are the hard days.
Oh.
But every single day, it was just such a beautiful thing, because it was an opportunity that I know God, it was without a doubt God given, without a doubt. And
Yeah.
so every step of the way, it was one of those things that we just knew that we couldn't do it without God. And
Yeah.
so he just kind of walked us through every day, step by step by step.
Yeah.
And in an extraordinary way, in a very Glordinary way.
Great job. Way to use the
Thank you.
the name there. So how do you feel like, having gone through the extraordinary no, how do you feel like that helped to prepare you for your Glordinary yes?
I feel like we were honored and scared, and it just makes you trust God all the more and say, okay, God, you led us through this. I don't quite
Yeah.
understand. I always want to know the why. And God's answer is, I don't have to give you a why. Which is so hard for me, because I want to know the why.
So frustrating.
So frustrating, but he works so much better that way, because so having gone through the no and then having gone through this waterfall of a yes, it just helps you know every step of the way, I can't do this without you,
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Right.
And so when you rely on God that heavily, it's just like a relationship with your spouse. Like when you rely on someone so much in that back and forth, I need you way, they show up, and they show up in a big way. And God really did. He showed up. And so not only did we walk through those years just like getting by, we actually flourished. And
That's
it
amazing.
was just one of those things, like, I mean, it wasn't like it was all sunshine and rainbows, but God's presence was with us every step of the way. And he continues to be. And so it's just, it's honoring to him when you just see how he works through that.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, question here, because I know every listener goes through seasons of change. Now, I'm going to be honest, we don't go through quadruplets, okay? You're definitely the overachiever here in the room, but we all go through seasons of change. And how did you find yourself connecting with God during this crazy quadruplet baby season? Because I can remember during that time in your life, I remember I have this picture, and it was of your fridge, and it was all the bottles lined up for like a nightly and maybe the next morning's
Yeah.
feeding. The entire first shelf of your fridge was all bottles.
Yeah, we did
ready
36 bottles a day.
That is just so raw. I didn't even own a fraction of that many bottles.
Yeah.
But life had certainly shifted, and like overnight shifted. And of course you had back and forth at the beginning with NICU and all of that, just craziness. And I'm confident your go-to rhythms of life had also completely shifted, right? So what were some of those in that season, that extraordinary yes? Like, how did you find yourself connecting with God in that season? Because undoubtedly it had to be different
Yeah.
than before, just to get through real life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Great question. Because before I had Jenna, I had the luxury of having like
Quiet
long,
time.
quiet times and
Right.
time in the morning and just time to get close to God and pray with him and
Right.
hear from him. And with these guys, that was just not the case. But that's
It's
the
like
beauty.
battle.
It is.
You're like in war.
Like going to the bathroom alone is a
Right?
win.
That's
right?
a luxury.
It is a luxury. But that's what I love about God, of how he just meets you where you're at, and it gives you exactly what you need at that time. Sometimes it would literally be like a 3-word, God, I need you.
Yeah.
Need you now.
We call those arrow prayers.
Arrow prayers.
Yep.
And I did a lot of arrow prayers.
Yeah.
And then I also, I had a Jesus Calling book, which,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
you know, they're short, like one. So I would have that open. I would try and read that while I'm cooking. this was before we had our phones with the Bible app.
Yes. Because we're that old.
Because we're that old.
Uh-huh.
But some family had given us a solar-powered Bible. It was really cool. So I would listen to the Bible.
Solar-powered?
Yeah, it was really cool. So listen to the Bible sometimes because I certainly couldn't sit down and read it. So I had the solar-powered Bible that I would listen to like when I was feeding the babies bottles.
This is like jungle. Like, I mean, like,
I think it was intended for the jungle, actually. I think someone gave it to us. It was like intended for
you were
missionaries.
doing like missionary warfare.
Kind of feels like it at home
Yeah.
every day. So it fit. So I listened to the Bible, but I had these arrow prayers. I would try and do a Jesus calling, but it was more just God being so loving and graceful. Oh, and also just the prayers of my family and friends. So I did, I had a blog that I was able to keep up, which I love now because I can look back and it kind of shows in raw time, like how I was relying on God.
Yeah.
But through that, I think there was a lot of people that were praying for us. And man, I felt like I was just riding on the wings of people's prayers
Yeah.
when we would go through just the day in, day out, because
Yeah.
the day in, day out is where it just is really hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure like in the moment it was really difficult, but when I look back on those seasons, God was so evident. He was so there.
Yeah, that's good. And I think people can relate to that, like feeling like they are living on like the wings of other
Yeah.
people's prayers.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you had said about the extraordinary no, as well as in the extraordinary yes in your life, that God can be trusted in either scenario, no matter what. And that jump from 1 to 5 kids would indeed make me say like, you got this, right, God? Like, this is like, because I most definitely do not got this. So like, you got this, right, God? But I love how you learned and you walked it out, that God is worth being trusted and that you are worth being led. And I think that is equally as important a lot of times, that we don't factor in, that we are worth being led and having someone to lead us, that we don't have to go it alone. That's not our job. We don't do it well. So we would be wise to lean into following him. So we're going to pick this up on tomorrow's chat with my friend and now your friend too, Becky Niemeyer. Remember, you're not alone in this. I'm praying for you, friend. Have a Glordinary day.